So the Bonanza bike has a Duromax 208cc engine on it with 18-pound springs, a header pipe, and a VM22 carb. With totally stock internals, even has a stock flywheel. And it did 52 miles an hour. .52 miles per hour, 52. And 3.75, 0 to 30. .75 for the first 0 to 30. So to make it more safe at those speeds and those RPMs, I'm going to add this Tilson 212E flywheel that's rated at 10K RPM for 10 seconds and 8K for 30 seconds. So that's a good alternative to a billet flywheel, at least for this engine, because it's not going to turn that many RPMs with the stock internals. And then I'm going to add these 1.3 ratio rockers to bump up the lift on the cam by 30%. And we'll see if it gains any top speed, and we'll see what it does at 0 to 30 with that extra lift. I know we're pushing the limit of the stock internals, so we'll see what happens there too. Swap out these rockers. I pull this plug out first. It'd be a lot easier to spin it over when I adjust the lash. So you can see a pretty big difference between the 1.3 on the right and the standard 1.1 ratio on the left. The bottom is a lot shorter. Okay, set the lash on these to 3 thousandths. .3 ratio rocker is installed. Now I'll swap out that stock flywheel for the Tilson 212E flywheel. 1.3 ratio rockers, along with the 18-pound springs, and a Tillotson 212E flywheel. So now the only weak component is the rod. So we'll see if it holds up for another top speed test before I throw a billet rod in here. Bonanza bike, Duromax 208, 1.3 ratio rockers, 0 to 30. All right, let's see what it did, 0 to 30. Okay, 3.93, 3.93. Let me try it again. All right, second attempt, Bonanza bike, Duromax 208, 1.3 ratio rockers, 0 to 30. Okay, second attempt, 0 to 30. Did a 3.88, 3.88. So very similar in quickness with the 1.3s. Let me see what top speed does. Okay, Bonanza bike, Duromax 208, 1.3 ratio rockers, top speed. Okay, let's see what it does for top speed. It did a top speed of 48.8. It looks like it lost a little bit of speed. It seemed like it might have been floating the valves just a speck, or jetting's off just a little bit, because it was cutting out at top end just a little bit. So the Bonanza bike lost like 1/10 of a second from 0 to 30 with the 1.3 ratio rockers and a few miles per hour. So it felt like the thing was cutting out or floating the valves, possibly. So I pulled the plug, and you can see, super lean. I mean, this thing is shiny. So I'll swap out this jet, and we'll see, or pull this bowl anyway, and we'll see what kind of jet we got in here. I can't remember. Do so many of these. I pulled this jet out of here, and it is a 120 jet. Has 120 in it. So up here at 3,700 feet, generally a 120 is pretty good, but every engine's different. So I'll just go ahead and pop a 125 in here. That's the closest I have for being bigger, because the plug looks lean. And then we'll try that. If that doesn't work, then it's floating the valves. All right, got the 125 jet in there. Let's go out and do a top speed, and we'll see if it still cuts out. 47.69 even with the bigger jet. So that shows me right there that it's floating the valves with the 18-pound springs and the 1.3 ratio rockers. I got those some 22-pound springs on there and probably stop it floating, maybe. But definitely doesn't like the 18s with the 1.3 on the Duromax. So with the 1.1 ratio, it did 3.750 to 30. And then 1.3 ratio rockers, it did 3.93 and 3.88. So it lost like 1/10 of a second. That's to be expected generally with a bigger cam. It's a little bit slower anyway, not as quick generally down low. And then top speed, it did 52 miles an hour with the 1.1 ratios and 48.8 with the 1.3s, and that's due to valve float. So it lost a little speed with the 1.3s, but there was one good thing we did was add a better flywheel, something that was rated at a little higher RPM for a little more safety.